Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 197 where, well actually this was the second game of a doubleheader. In the previous game my opponent had white and we got a Sicilian where I played the dragon variation. This game I had white, so I kick off with e4 to see what he does, and he plays e5, and so we go into a Ruy Lopez. So this is the main line, a6, kicking the bishop, also known as the Morphy defense, and then knight f6, attacking the pawn, and then white castles, ignoring the threat to the pawn. So my opponent chooses to take the pawn, which you see is the second most popular move here. Bishop e7 is the main line. You can also play b5 and then bishop to c5. I play that way sometimes, kind of an interesting new way to play. But knight takes e4 is the open variation of the Ruy Lopez. And if you don't know anything about this, you can just play the move rook to e1 and try and get your pawn back, and it's probably okay for white and a little simpler to play. The main line, however, is d4, trying to undermine the center, and there's various complications if black takes the pawn. You do get a pin against the knight, but the main move here is first b5, kicking the bishop, and then d5, supporting the knight. And so this is typically the way it's played. And then you can take the pawn and the pawn, and so you get your material back. And white or black has a somewhat peculiar knight here. So the move bishop e6 is necessary to, well, I don't know. There's probably alternatives. I shouldn't say necessary, but the yeah, okay, that's pretty much the main move there. Bishop e6. You need to support the d pawn here, which was under attack, and then white here has a choice between c3 and knight bd2, and probably knight bd2 is the most accurate move here, but it looks like c3 is a main move too. But it does allow the Dilworth attack, so whereas knight bd2 would force the game into different channels. So let me show you how the game went. And bishop c5. So the idea is that black is concentrating on f2 here and may even take that pawn, giving up the two pieces in exchange for a rook and a pawn, but only under the right circumstances, because in general that's not good. But knight bd2, challenging the knight, is the main move, and then black castles. And actually I was a little bit confused here. I thought castles was not the right move order, but in fact that was. And so I went ahead and took the knight here, which is a bit of a mistake. The main move here is bishop c2. And this allows the Dilworth attack, which is knight takes f2, the third choice here. So if he takes, just want to show you this line. You take with the rook, he takes. That's right. He doesn't take right away. This is the reason why it's good. He doesn't take right away with the bishop. He plays f6 first to open up some more lines. Then bishop takes f2, king takes, and then queen takes f6. And so he gets a lot of pressure on the f-file. And so that's the key idea of the Dilworth attack, is not the immediate recapture with the bishop on f2, because after all the rook is pinned, if you back up to this situation. After taking the knight, the rook is pinned here, so it's not going anywhere, so he has time to play another move, and so f6 is the idea. And you see, white can play this, and it's still good for white if you look at the computer evaluation, but it can be kind of tricky. Black gets a lot of compensation for his pawn. Well, actually, it's not a pawn, but he's kind of sacrificed material, because giving up two pieces for a rook and a pawn is usually not a good trade. But there is compensation in this case. So that's the Dilworth attack, and that's why early on, before c3, if you want to avoid that, play the move of knight bd2. So, but I played in the game c3, and which is also a move, and then knight bd2, which is a move, and but this allows the Dilworth attack. If you follow the main line, bishop c2. So I was a little bit confused about the move order, and I played knight takes e4 here, thinking that he had made a mistake with castles, but actually I was the one who was confused about the move order. So knight takes e4, this is a move that apparently leaves black with some edge here, so just not the best way to play. I should go ahead and bite the bullet and allow the Dilworth attack, since I didn't play the knight b to d2 before c3. So that's your little bit opening theory. So at this point we're out of the book, so let's just look at the notation tab. I took the knight, he takes back. And yeah, black has a slight edge. I was thinking, well, this knight here, maybe I can take the bishop and create some ugly pawns on the e file, but he takes my bishop first. And then I grab the pawn, and isn't it? No, it's his move. He can grab, right, he grabs my pawn, and I can grab his pawn. It looks like, though, the pawn grab is not good. It looks like e3 is the best move here. Just pushing on with this pawn and maybe inflicting some structural damage, because this pawn is going to be lost anyway, so you might as well push it on. So knight e5 allows the move queen to h5. Let's see what this would do. New variation. I guess there is a threat here on pretty obvious threat here on h7, so he has to do something about that. It forces h6. Then knight takes e4. And his queen is not under attack. They're on different diagonals. Okay, I was missing that point. But it avoids the queen trade, so that's pretty interesting. So that's a way for white to keep an edge in this line. So I just took back immediately with the pawn, and now a queen trade is possible. He plays bishop to b6, just getting the bishop out of take, and I play queen to c2. So, I don't want to trade the queens either, but this is just a less active square for my queen. It looks like black has a good game here. His pieces are actually more developed than mine, and yep, it looks like he's doing fine. So he played queen e7, and I went knight g5 again, going for the old checkmate threat, and he covered it with knight g6. And then I play bishop d2. It's just because black got his bishop out first, this is the advantage of early development. There doesn't appear to be many good squares left for my bishop. Here it's subject to attack from the knight. Let's erase this one. Here it's subject to attack from the knight, and here it's subject to attack from the bishop. So I want to move it off the back rank so my rooks can connect and come to the center. So bishop d2 is the only move. It's not a very impressive move, though. Okay, so rook f to d8. Logical. Hitting my weaknesses, and I just retreat my knight here, defending the bishop and preparing to bring some rooks out. He goes queen f6. Then I went bishop g5. Yeah, queen f6 was just a blunder. So I think he was just a little off today, because he actually has a decent rating and doesn't usually make so many mistakes. But he blundered the queen in the first game, and here, I was already thinking of the move bishop to g5 here with this skewer. Not that one, this one. But he could just block it with the move f6, and so I didn't think that was all that great. So if he had played something other than queen f6, say he just moved his knight somewhere. Actually, it's hard to think of a nothing move here. Maybe he advances his pawn to c5 as a variation, and I play here. And he just plays f6. And I guess, it does open a diagonal onto his queen, but the engine is not impressed. It doesn't look like that's any great shakes. So, okay, but queen f6 is the blunder, because now there's no good answer to bishop g5. So he's just down the exchange. So the game continues. He plays on down the exchange for quite a bit, but he never really gets much going here. So I'll just go through the game. There are a couple interesting points later, but so far I'm just trading down material. If I get to a rook versus bishop endgame, which actually happens, that's usually pretty straightforward to win. Yeah, this was one interesting point. I just totally forgot that the c4 pawn was under attack. So it was all good up to this point. I should play rook d8 check, the engine recommends, or rook d5, just activating my pieces. And instead I play queen d2, offering a queen trade, which would also be good, but he can just take a pawn, and he does. So this sort of lets him back in the game a little bit. At least see I still have a winning advantage, really. So rook c1 attacking there, and then queen d8 check. It's just hard to prevent this. I'm going to get a pawn back on c7 here. He goes king h7. The engine, if we back up, the engine seems to like blocking with the bishop a little bit, but I still can pick up the pawn. So, and then the bishop went to b6, queen back to c2. So once again, we're at that range where I'm just a couple of pawns up. Well, up the exchange, which is worth a couple of pawns, and I'm just trying to trade off some material and get to an endgame. And then here, this is probably another mistake on his part. I think he was starting to get low on time, because this move a4 is just not good. It's gives up the pawn for nothing, really. And then he allows the queen trade. And right here, this is the other instructive moment, the next instructive moment, I guess. The simplest win here, I completely missed. The simplest win here is just to push the pawn, because there's no good way for him to stop it. The bishop has to get to this square to stop the pawn, because that's the only other square on the same color as the bishop, and he can't get there because the rook is covering it. So there's already, you see, a mate in 23. So the simple move a5 just wins the game here. I play the much slower move rook d2. Well, it's not a slow move exactly. I'm hitting his bishop, forcing things to happen, but the things I force to happen are I force him to blockade the pawn with his bishop. So this is a very kind of instructive point here. There's only two squares you have to worry about with this pawn, and by pushing ahead with a5, you've limited it to only one square. His king is not in the picture, right? Only the bishop can stop that pawn, and it can only stop it on those two squares. And so if you push to the first one, he's limited to only one square where he can stop it, and he can't even reach there. So that would have been worth thinking about at that point in the game, because I think I had time. So anyway, so we get into a long, slow grind. I mean, I knew this was a winning endgame, so I guess I sort of played it quickly, but it's always nice to play precisely. Sometimes things can go wrong when you think you have a win and things go wrong. But anyway, this shows some of the technique for using a rook against the bishop. You use the rook to cut off his pieces and to threaten forks and things like that. He might have, after this check, I was wondering, oh yeah, I gave the check at a point where he couldn't come towards the pawn. He could have come forward this way, but the engine likes king c7 anyway. Yeah, but it's important, you don't want to chase the king into a position where it's attacking the pawn. So that check had to be carefully timed, but it allows me to pick up some pawns over here on the queen side, and I get to a position here where I actually get kind of stuck. Because it's just a little bit awkward here. I want to play king to b6 and then rook to g8 is checkmate. But if ever I play king b6, he just goes here and checks, and I can't really get out of it. So the engine is suggesting king b5 or f4. f4 right away. Yeah, I eventually come up with the f4 plan. So let's go up through the moves. I decide, well, he's stuck back here with his king. He can't even move away from either of these two squares. He's basically stuck on those two squares, because if he ever goes here, I push to a7 and then queen. So he's stuck on those squares. So I can bring my king over here and support the pawn push. And then now he can't stop me. He's going to have to sacrifice his bishop to stop the pawn. And actually it's reached the point once again where he can't even get to a square that would stop the pawn. So I'm just going to march the pawn down there and checkmate him. So he resigned at this point. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting game. Just that one blunder kind of gave it away. And hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.